Welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see all of you signed in with us today. I'm Jenny Mello. I'm here with Shauna Brower. And today we are rolling out this new format of a Lunch and Learn. Lunch and Learn, this is meant to be a little bit more interactive, a little bit more engaging than the current webinars you're attending now. We're going to spend the first 20 to 30 minutes discussing our topic, and then we're going to open it up at the end for all of your questions and comments. And we'll also take that time to discuss some future events we have coming up that will be available to you. Today's Lunch and Learn topic is discussing the new release of Compass, version 8.3.60. And before we get started, I have a few things I'd like to address. Your GoToWebinar control panel that's opened up on the right side probably of your screen. There are two areas I'd like for you to focus on. The first one being the handouts. We have provided the slides for today's tutorial, so feel free to download those, keep track of them, make notes on them, do whatever you wish there. And the second one is going to be the questions chat box that you see at the bottom. As we're going through and discussing and reviewing these enhancements, I'd like for you to use that, add in any questions, comments along the way, because that is what we're going to open up at the end to address to the group. Okay, so let's get ready to learn. I'm going to pass this over to Shauna and we'll get started.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Jenny for those initial comments there. We have, as Jenny mentioned, the new release coming out next week, the new Compass release, and there are some great features in there, and we're going to talk through those today. But before I jump into what exactly those features are, I wanted to kind of put a wrapper around this and explain to you why we're doing what we're doing in some of these changes in this release. And really, as we talk through it, you'll notice that the theme underlying all of this is working smarter and not harder. What we have is a lot of disjointed type things that really come together when you think about simplifying some of the easier, more basic functions that you do on a regular basis in Compass, getting those done faster, easier, more intuitively so that you can move on to more important things. You can move on to more analysis or more forecasting or finishing your budget or strategic planning or what-if scenarios, lots of other things. So streamlining some of the more basic items and moving on to the more important things is the theme of what we've got in this release here. Now, having said that, there are four highlights that we're going to talk through today. First thing we're going to talk about is the updated validation. That'll be the first thing. We'll get to that next slide. Second item of the four is faster downloads. We've got some changes that we've made, some tweaks to this process that make it quicker and easier for you to get through that process and moving on into more important things. Third item, you are going to be very excited to see some new streamlined rate shock computes. We've got new screens, consolidated functions, again with that same theme of making things easier, quicker, and more intuitive. Then all of those wrap together to create new and revised reports. So we've got all of these things within the system that we've improved upon, and the result of that is some new and revised reports that are more intuitive, more understandable, more actionable, that you can communicate with your, between yourselves and with others within your organization. So those are the four main items that we're going to go through today. We're going to jump right in and talk first of all about the Compass model validation. So with this release, we will have a brand new third-party model validation that has been done. Regulatory guidance, as I'm sure you know, states that periodically model vendors should have a third-party model validation done, and we've done that concurrent with this new release, so you'll have that available next week. I do want to take a step back and give a couple bullet points on this because we had a lot of questions on this one, a lot of good questions. I want to cover off on some of the main ones we hear typically. One is, what is a model validation? Model validation covers the methodologies and math in the model. When we put 2 plus 2 in the model, does the answer of 4 pop out? Does the math work the same way that we say it's going to work? What we have in the user guide, does that tie out with the explanations of the formulas within the system? Do the methodologies hold true? Are they correct? So it really looks at the bones of the system, the databases behind the system. Do they actually work correctly and mathematically are they sound. So what a model validation is not is an independent review. And we get this question a lot. An independent review is more of an understanding or a review of what assumptions are in your model. What have you put in there for pricing or decay rates or prepayment models and things like that? And are those reasonable, reliable, understandable, consistent with the rest of what you're saying within your organization? So an independent review, slightly different than a model validation. Independent review has some judgment on it. Are your assumptions reasonable? Model validation says, do those numbers, does the math work? We don't care if not. So when you think about it that way, going back to that first bullet point, that's exactly why it's a periodic requirement. It's not an annual requirement. You will not see us coming out with every 12 or 18 months a new model validation. We do not change some of the underlying principles within the model that frequently, so that's not something that we update that validation for. So a couple points on that. That will be available next week when this new release comes out. You can get it off of our website. You can email us a copy of it. The bottom line for all of this, though, is if you have any questions about it personally, if your auditors or examiners are questioning it, please don't hesitate to call us. We are more than happy to talk through that with you, more than happy directly, whatever makes the most sense on that one. So that was the first point. Before we move on to the second, though, I want to give you a couple of logistics on this new release. We've mentioned it, 8.3.60. It will be coming out next week. It will be the same as prior releases. There's no change in how we're rolling it out to you. When you pull up Compass, you will see a prompt that says a new release is available. You have the ability to click on that and download that release. If you have any questions during the process, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, but no changes from that standpoint. One additional point, though, I want to make is that when you have that prompt, when you get that prompt to do the new release, to download the new release, you'll also see a prompt that says, here's our change notes. Take a look at those. They are more comprehensive than what we're going to go over today. There's a few minor things we're not covering today, and it's another handwritten copy of the changes that are new to this release. So take a look at that either when you do it or if you forget to do it at that point in time. When you're in Compass under Help on the top right-hand side, there's an online change notes option that you can choose, and that will always give you the most recent changes in the model. So take a look for that. So a couple logistics there, one on the model validation here on how the release is going to be rolled out to you. Let's move on to the second point I mentioned. So of those 4 highlights, we've got faster downloads is one of the main things that we're going to talk about. Faster downloads. No major changes in how the download works, and we'll look at that, but what we have done is made a few things a lot easier to process. So let's take a look at that. Here's your download screen. No changes. You're going to click on that red bridge. You're going to click on that perform download. And what typically happens is you get an error log, and if you've had new loan codes or new GL codes, new balance sheet income statement codes, or even investment codes, you will get an error log that pops out what those new codes are. I'm going to run through an example through this presentation today that is consistent through the whole presentation. So in my example, it's some loan codes that I've kicked out. Again, this may be new GL accounts, for example. But in my case here, I've got loan codes. I've got a number of them that have kicked out. What typically you do and what you will do in the future is click on that correlation table. My loan maturity correlation table is the one I'm going to look at in this case. And it's going to pop up the loan maturity correlation table. There are some new features on the right-hand side of this. You'll see a new button that says View New Codes. You will see that pops up a new table here, and it automatically moves those new codes over. So 2 big benefits here. One, there is no more copying and pasting of those codes out of that error log into the correlation table. And secondly, if there were 10 codes that were exactly the same, it eliminates all those duplicates. It moves them over just the 1 code that you need. So 2 big changes there. So viewing new codes moved it over here. We'll transfer the new codes over to that left-hand side. Instead of copying and pasting, transfer them over, hit that button, click on Sort to Map. It will sort them In my example here, they're all in one spot, but they may be all over the place, as you've noticed, as I'm sure you've added accounts in the past or codes in the past. They can be interspersed. And at this point in time, all you need to do is drag and drop, as you've done in the past, those compass codes over to the left-hand side to take care of that. So, just to recap, on the second bullet point, faster downloads, what we've done is we've eliminated the need for you to copy and paste or even manually input those new codes from the error log into Compass. We've removed the duplicate codes. This should make that download process work a little smoother than it has in the past, and definitely a lot quicker.
Okay, so we're going to pause for a minute and take a little break here. We've got our first poll to the group. You're going to see it pop up here on your screen in just a moment. If you could all, real quickly, just answer for us, what version of Compass are you running? You've got the Budget Compass, GL only, Budget Compass Plus, you're budgeting with some cash flows, and then, of course, Financial Compass, you've got the cash flows plus budget and interest rate risk. We'll take just a couple of seconds here while we get everyone updated. And if we don't have it all, that's all right. We'll just take a quick peek here. Okay. I'm going to close off. Take a look at these results here real quick. Okay, so majority of you running Financial Compass. I see some Budget Compass and Budget Compass Plus users. That's great. I love the mix of what we have here. The purpose for me doing this is I just want to say that the validation and the download we've just discussed will affect everybody. You'll all take advantage. But for you Budget Compass and Budget Compass Plus users, just hang tight. We're about to go through a few Financial Compass interest rate risk related enhancements. But after that, we're still getting to the question and answer and discussing those future events at the end. So bear with us here just one moment, and we're going to continue forward to get there.
Right, so like Jenny mentioned, the next bullet point that we're going to talk about is rate shock related. So we have got some great new features within the rate shock section here, and I'm going to talk through those two features. So in the former version, in the current version that you have, you will note that you have the three compute buttons, the regular compute, rate shock, non-parallel. New release consolidates this to two compute buttons. Whoops, sorry there. Parallel and non-parallel have been combined into one button. When you click on that one button, you will see a new compute screen. We will be looking at that in the next slide here. But just overall, the reasoning behind that, we've added some functionality on that screen. We've combined several screens so you don't have to go to multiple places within the system. We've put it all on one screen. We've made it a lot more intuitive and easy to use. So again, back to our working smarter and not harder theme for this, we've really kind of moved some things around, consolidated some things, and made them a lot easier for you to use. So let's take a look at that new screen. This is what it looks like. Bear with me because I'm going to talk you through this whole screen. It's actually very intuitive, even though right on the surface it probably looks a little overwhelming. But right away you'll notice that parallel, non-parallel gap, all on the same page. We've combined everything onto one screen. Again, no need to go to multiple screens there. Next big piece, and this is huge. This is super, I wish I could see all your faces now because you're going to be so excited about this piece of it here. We have created the ability for you to do multiple years, to compute multiple years at the same time. So in the examples I'm going to be going through, what I have done is computed a 1 and a 2 year parallel and non-parallel rate shock. In the past, you've had to compute the parallel 1 year, then you compute the parallel, non-parallel 1 year, excuse me, then you run some reports, then you go back in and compute the 2 year parallel, 2 year non-parallel, and then run some more reports. That is no longer. We've combined all these computes. We're storing all the data. You can pull the reports and choose the years that you want. One compute button. Very exciting stuff. We're going to look at a few examples of this going forward, but this is one of the bigger features within the system. So again, in the examples I'm running through, I've done a 1 and a 2, but you can do up to 4 years worth of computes at one point in time. A few more things on this screen. Policy limits. Policy limits have been moved over to one page. Again, no need to go to multiple sources for those. The other thing is we've expanded the ability to have multiple years or different policy limits for different years. Some of our clients I know right now have different, for example, different 1-year and 2-year rate shock limits. And you've got the ability to do that within the system now, so no need to change those limits and rerun reports. If you do not have that, no worries. You just leave whatever you've got in here consistent throughout. You're good with that. But if you do have that, or if you have that future need to do that, know that you can do that in the system now. You can save those policies in there, and the reports will run appropriately based on that. A couple more things on this page. Shock intervals. So in the past, we had the ability that you could set these shock intervals. You could customize those. But on this screen is where you will do it in the future. So I've got -400 through +400 and 100 basis point increments. You could change this to, you know, -200, -150, -50, whatever is most appropriate for you. In this whole little box here, anything in this section, both here and in these policy limits here, anything in white is something that you can just type over. So those and then the shock intervals, go ahead and do those. Real quickly at the top of the screen, very intuitive, very simple. Compute, close, save policies. So if I've gone in and added some policies, just save those policies without computing. You can get out of that. So again, everything on one screen, everything in one place, consolidated all these computes, consolidated our ability to run reports for different years. Lots of great stuff on this page here. The fourth item we're going to talk about. So we've talked about the functions that we've built into the system. Now what do you do with them? What's changed? We have revised and created some new reports, and I'm going to go through several examples of these. But overall, our philosophy was, what can we do to these reports to make them more intuitive, more user-friendly, more actionable, help you tell your it with the rest of your organization more. So we've done that in a number of spots, and I'm going to show you some specifics there. The other thing that we've done in some of these reports, as well as some of the things I've already talked about, is we're laying the groundwork for some future changes. We've built in the ability to save multiple years worth of computes for some future changes. We've done some things behind the scenes that you won't see the benefit of right away, but keep in mind that we've got some good things in the works as well for future releases. So let's jump in and let's take a look at some reports. The majority of the report changes happen in that rate risk section within reporting. A lot of it is semantics. We have renamed some of the reports to say parallel or non-parallel to make them a little more intuitive, a little more easier to find. We have done some revisions that are across the board. So we've added some summary line items. We have changed the terminology from market value of equity to economic value of equity across the board. You'll see those all over the place. But in particular, we're going to take a look at an example in the parallel economic value of equity report. So we'll look at this one, but please know as we look at this one, some of these changes apply to many reports. They're very similar in many reports. We're also going to look, we've got two new summary reports. We've got a parallel and non-parallel rate shock summary reports. We'll take a look at one of those, a lot of new information on there. We've got an existing report, a parallel rate shock offering rate report, which is a great report to look at. We've added some functionality that adds the beta option in there, so we're going to look at that one a little closely as well. And then the last one we're going to look at is the Risk Compass package, the report package that exists within Compass today. We've made some in this, and we've got some future changes that are major. I want to talk through some of those as well. So that's, in a nutshell, the overview of the report changes. But let's take a look at those one by one. First one I mentioned, parallel economic value of equity report. And again, for this one, you will note similar changes on other reports. So if you look at it, it looks very similar to what you've seen in the past. We've changed that terminology from market value of equity to economic value of equity. Some of the things are the same, so you see that percentage change in EV existed before. But a couple of things we've added on reports is the policy limits that you put on that compute screen, as well as a quick check as to whether you're compliant or not. So I can quickly scan through this report and see, yes, when rates drop, if rates were to drop 400 basis points immediately, I'm in compliance with this report. So again, a few things we've built into the reports to make them a little more actionable, a little bit more, you know, what does this tell me, answers that question right off the bat. Second report I want to look at is the parallel rate shock summary report. I mentioned that we've got a parallel and a non-parallel version of this. I'm going to look at the parallel. Non-parallel is very similar to this. These reports replace the one report, the rate shock regulatory report. That one is no more. You will see that broken into these two new reports. Biggest changes on this, we've included multiple years worth of results. So in my example, I computed a 1 and a 2 year rate shock. I see both years worth of results on this one page. We've added the policy limits for both of these. We've added a quick check to say whether they're compliant or not. I can quickly scan this and see in my 2 year rate shock, when rates drop 400 basis points, I am out of compliance. Then I can quickly go through and you know, is that right? Is that what I was expecting? Do I need to look at something? Things right off the bat there. Last point I want to make on this report, economic value of equity. There's only one of them on here. We get the question every once in a while, so I'm going to address it here. When you run an economic value of equity report, it does not matter whether you've computed a 1 year, a 2 year, or a 3 year. The economic value of equity, if you recall, is the present value of all the cash flows for each account within Compass. So there is only one answer to this. Does not matter with how many years you're doing your shock for. All right, next one we're going to look at, a parallel rate shock offering rate report. I mentioned that this is an existing report. This is an excellent report. I hope you're looking at it now. I've built in some extra comments here just to give it a little plug because I think this is one that has a lot of functionality and has got a lot of use today and in the future. It is a great one to check for reasonableness of your pricing assumptions. So as you're going through account by account making change, a great one to look overall to make sure they're reasonable. Here is the existing report. This is what this looks like today. If I were to look at this and I want to look at my money market accounts, what this report tells me is that my offering rate on my money market accounts is 35 basis points today. If rates were to rise 400 basis points, my offering rate on these, based on my pricing model, is 2.4%. So a lot of things this tells me on the page here. There's my pricing model. I can look across the line item here. I can see I go down as low as 10 basis points, as high as 240. Lots of things that this says here as you read this. Another thing you can do is look at this compared to another account. So here's my 1 year CDs that I've pulled up here. You can see that at today, when rates are the current rates, I'm offering 40 basis points on this account versus a 35 on my money market, so very close. But when rates rise 400 basis points, my CDs I'm projecting will increase 400 basis points as well. So it's a 1-for-1 increase on my CDs, 400 basis points right there. So good information on here. I can compare line items. I can compare rates across horizontally, vertically, lots of things. But what we had found, and again, this is an existing report, but what we found is people were looking at this and saying, okay, that's great, but what is my beta? So you can tell what your beta is if you look at this. Let's do the quick math here. You can see on my money market accounts, 240 is my highest, 35 is where I am right now, so that's a difference of 2.05%. 205% or 2.05 divided by that 400 basis points is a 51% increase. So when rates rise 400 basis points, 51% of that increase I've reflected in my money market account pricing. So my beta is 51. So you can figure it out, but what we did in this next release is we took that math off the table for you and we did it for you. So if you go into the system, go into the parallel rate shock offering reports, click on properties, right click, choose properties. There's a new option in there now in the new release that says show betas. If you select yes for that, you will get this report, new title on the top, which I've highlighted there for you to see, and then you'll see on my money market accounts that there's my beta of 51. So you can also see quickly, here's my 1 year CD we talked about that had 100% increase. When rates rose, it went from 40 to 440. That's a 100% increase based on the rates, and you can see that that 100 is reflected there as well. So both ways are great ways to looking at it. Some people like to look at beta. Some people like to look at the actual rates. Honestly, both of them are good things to look at because both of them are good tools to communicate with different people in your organization. So that is the offering rate report. Last report I want to talk about is the Risk Compass report. Not sure how many of you use that report. It is actually a suite of reports. It's outside of the reporting section. It's under Utilities. There's a Risk Compass option within Compass. And what that does is it creates a suite of reports that's a combination of some explanation of the terminology and the thinking around rate check in general. It gives you some summary level reports, and then it gives you a lot of detailed reports in it. Typically that package, if you've never run it before, that package is 50+ pages long. It's a nice consolidated overall interest rate risk package, but there's a lot to it. I had mentioned earlier we've got some things in the hopper. We're knee-deep in making some changes for the future releases, and this is one of the things that we're going to be changing, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But for this release, what we have done is made some minor tweaks to it. And what you will notice, if you click on Utilities and Risk Compass, you will get a new screen that pops up. Looks like there's a lot on here, but there's really not. Same base report, minor changes. You'll notice that economic value of equity terminology has been changed, for example. But one of the bigger changes is we've given you the ability to select which reports to print. We have found that customers sometimes don't like to include one report or another, so we've given you the quick ability to just uncheck those reports what you want. Again, it is a very big report, so if you want to take those out, now's the time to do that. Second thing we did is allowed you to run these reports for multiple years. So in my example, I have run the report for 1 and 2 year. I've done that compute. I can go in here, run the 1 year report. It will create a 1 year interest rate risk package. I could go back here, change this option to 2 year, or run that 2 year interest rate risk package. So they're not combined right now, but you can run them both without having to run that compute a second time, which is a huge benefit. So future changes to this include consolidating those, but again, some of the things that we've built in here allow us to make that change in the future.
Okay, quick check-in with everybody. We've just taken a look at the new validation coming out, some faster downloads, the streamlining to the rate shock computes, and some new and revised reports. So another poll coming at you. If you wouldn't mind, real quick, letting us know which of these features do you think you will be able to benefit from the most? We'll just take a couple minutes. Honestly, this is more for my feedback. I love to know, are we on the right track? Are we giving people what they're needing, what they're wanting? So this is, really appreciate this one. I'll still share it at the end, but not going to lie, it's more for us, more than you. Okay, we've got about most of the people here have answered, so I'm going to go ahead and close it so we can move forward. So great, most of you saying all of them. That's great. That's wonderful. I love to hear it. Just want to make sure, like I said, we're on the right track. You're liking what we're giving you, making sure we're covering all of our areas here. Okay, so we're on to our next part, questions. We're going to open up our question panel here. I'm going to let Shauna go for a minute while I take a look at a few things.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of sort through those quickly, so bear with us here. We're going to go through some questions, and then at the end we're going to talk about upcoming events and future changes. So some of the questions that we typically get asked are, how quickly, what type of compute time should I expect? You've combined all these computes into one. How quickly will that compute happen? So quick answer to that is it's actually a little bit faster than it is today. So it took me, before I walked into the conference room here, it took me 2 minutes and 25 seconds to run a compute on a 1 year, 2 year, parallel, non-parallel. So very quick. We picked up some time. Definitely a lot faster than running them individually. I don't know if you're like me, you would hit the compute button and go get a cup of coffee and then come back and then forget about it and then hit the next compute button. So it certainly frees up some time there, but definitely a little faster than the current release. And I should mention before we jump into the rest of the questions, we asked Jim Grohr to join us. Jim is one of the major architects behind this new release, and so he's intimately aware with all of the changes we've got going in there. So quick questions here. Jim's going to address this next one. Do you want to read it, Jim?
Question here is, where is the ability to set up pricing models based on a beta coefficient value rather than manually setting up each increase level? As of right now, the beta is actually just a display. You're not able to go in there and change that. But it's a very good question because it's come up before. You're not alone. We do that on our list of enhancements. It's just not in this particular version, but we're looking at that. It's come up past. And there's one other question up in parallels, no pun intended, as far as the adjusting, where do you adjust the severity of the non-parallel shifts in the yield curve? Couple things. First off, our hope and our plan is that when you download the non-parallel yield curve shifts every month, okay, our hope is that the severity of those shifts will be enough for the regulators. Currently, the parallel shock that they want you to do is at least 300 or 400 basis points, and the non-parallel stress test, there are going to be some curves that are going to stress the short, medium, and long end of the curve by at least the amount of the current regulatory requirements. So in order to change that, however, if you do want to change it, you actually go to Utilities, and you will go to the same screen because it's not being computed like before, so it was a good observation, and I think we're going to try taking you there. So Utilities, there's an editor, which is the screen that you're familiar with from the old compute routine. You see that non-parallel scenario editor? So if you need to go in there and do that, our hope is that you don't. But if you need to go in there, that screen is exactly the same as before. You just access it a different way.
Yep, great question there. We had another question along similarly. So if I go into that new compute the rate shock, sorry, I pulled some over this side. No, I do not want to save changes. So if you go in here, somebody asked about what about ramped. So I ran an immediate. Ramped is still definitely an option there. Shocking future is still an option. You get to choose how many months out. So I've simplified our example for the presentation today, but you have not point. All right, next question.
One question I saw a few people ask, so just to clarify real quick for the group, we do run 3 versions of the Compass program. If you were running Budget Compass is GL based only. We match it back to your GL. We still automate the download. You budget, forecast, you plan that way. Budget Compass Plus has the same concept, but we've able to layer in all the instruments. So it's an instrument level version of a budgeting program. So I just don't want to budget for commercial loans. I want to know what portion is fixed versus variable versus adjustable with a ceiling kind of thing. And then Financial Compass takes it a step further. We still have the instruments. You can still budget, forecast, and plan. But because we now have all of the instrument level data, you're also able to perform your rate shock off of that to get all of your interest rate risk and your ALCO reports out. So it's 3 different levels. One is GL, one is instrument level budgeting, and then one is instrument level budgeting and interest rate risk.
All right, another question. We've got a lot of good ones in here, so I appreciate you guys throwing them out here. Will the changes to the rate shock reports affect the format or layout of any existing custom reports created in Compass? So the quick answer, if I'm reading this question correctly, is no. We have not changed that. What we have added is for people who use the add-in effectively and robustly. What you can do is we've added a lot of this data to be accessible via the add-in. Some of it wasn't. So if you have custom reports via the add-in, you now have the ability to pull more data. So for example, multiple years worth of results will be stored out there. But it does not change any custom reports you have built. Do you agree, Jim, or is there some caveat to that?
I agree. There's another side to that, and that would be is if you did say a save as of the existing report and you're saving that within Compass, so you're not doing anything outside of Compass with the add-in. You've got a report that's saved with a different level of detail, what have you, that's still in the Compass model. That will not change. However, if you recall the screen display, we had the policy guidelines with the compliant yes or no message at the bottom. Some people like to export their reports to Excel and reformat them. So you will get some extra information at the bottom of the report that if you're doing something, again, outside by exporting to Excel, that there's new information there that you'll need to account for. So there's 3 different things going on. Add in saving custom reports within Compass and exporting reports from Compass to Excel. The only one that could really be affected would be if you're exporting to Excel. It's going to export a couple extra lines of information that you account for or ignore.
Yeah, so we internally here always joke with Jim that his answer is always, it depends, and he gave you the long version of his typical answer of it depends. As you're going through that, as you see that, if it doesn't quite make sense or you have some questions, certainly give us a call and we will talk you through that individually. Now I'm checking the clock. We're running a little bit over the time. Oh no, I'm sorry. I had the wrong time showing. So we're good on time. I have a couple more questions I want to hit up on, and then we mentioned we want to talk about future events as well. There's a question about simple variance reports and updating those. Please know that we continually are looking at reports. That one, that's not on my short list, but we'll certainly take a look at that. But I did mention the Risk Compass report in particular because that is something that we are working on very hard. We've got some plans in the works. We're about halfway done with where we want to be as far as making a more robust, more understandable, intuitive Risk Compass package. And if any of you are interested in helping us kind of vet that out as we get towards the later stages several months from now, or hopefully sooner than that, as you're exiting later today, not quite yet, please stay right now, but later today as you're exiting, in the comment section of the survey, if you could just give me some information, give me your name and phone number and just say, hey, I'm interested in talking more about that, that'd be great. So we're going to flip back. We're in Compass right now, but I want to flip back, Jenny, if you wouldn't mind, to that last screen because we have some things coming up here that I want everybody to be aware of as well. We have upcoming events. Jenny had mentioned some of these already. Please check our website or email us if you are interested in participating in any of those going forward. Some of them, like the Compass Roundtables and Advanced Coaching, we host here in our Schaumburg offices in the Chicagoland areas. We have Lunch and Learns. This is our first one. Jenny had mentioned this is the first one we've done. We want to continue this concept going forward, and the intent would be to spend 20 or 30 minutes talking about a specific topic and then open it up to questions within the group. Now, we have a lot of people on the phone right now, so we're not opening it up. We're asking you to type them in, but in theory, we'd open it up and you could actually live, ask your questions. So more topics on that. So having said that, again, you're going to see a survey as you leave today, and we're going to check real quickly, see if we have any new questions we want to answer here, but I think we've hit up on most of them.
There was one question regarding being able to accommodate negative interest rates within the model. In that particular case, I would just say a blanket generally, we don't accommodate negative interest rates when it comes to the income simulations. You can do it in a forecast, but not in the rate shock income simulation. However, you can, for EVE purposes, set up the model to calculate present values using a negative interest rate. So I've made a notation of the submitter of the question, and we're going to follow up with you individually after the webinar today.
Yes, so I can't stress enough, everyone. Thank you. While I have you, you're here. If you read any of my blogs, because yes, I do that constantly on our website, you know that I am a firm believer that knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you grow. You know all that cheesy. So please, look at the bottom. I want you to email me, call me. I've spoken with a lot of you over the years. Don't be shy about it. That survey at the end is not just a generic webinar survey. Shauna and I designed those questions specifically for you. We want to make sure you're getting the most out of these sessions and events. So please use that. Give us all of your thoughts and feelings. We take it all to heart. We're building and growing on this as well. So check it out at plansmith.com/events for future happenings, and always know you can call me, email me, or any of us for that matter if anything comes up down the road. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That concludes our first Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much for attending. I know I'll see you at future events. Yeah, take care. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.